Okay, so I'm back again to do J-Bug from B2K. My Tourette's got the best on me, so I had to do it over again. I'm trying it again. See how I do. Let's see how I do this time. You know, for me, um, there's no sense of trying to make it what people always call it perfect, because it's just still coming crooked and messed up. So look like I might need a new marker. That's all I'm gonna do right now. Now we got, just color him in. I need a new marker trying to go out on me. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some yellow and gold first for like certain highlights on him. I like to put the highlights on first before I do anything. Before I start trying to bring out some features. So I'm gonna get the premium color yellow and gold. And I'm not gonna put it like on the whole face or anything, just certain parts of him for like highlights. Now I'm gonna get this gold. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the brown, the crazy art brown. I'm gonna go over certain parts of his face with it too, also for features. Now I'm gonna get the toasted toffee, the crazy hot toasted toffee, and I'll try to fill it in with it.
Kroll could see the pity in his eyes. Oh, Captain, he moaned. You will curse the day you went to sea, just as I do now. Your ship is a fountain of death. You will not spare a living soul. Please, the captain said, trying to calm him. You are only having visions. It is the fever talking. And the sick man rolled with a hideous sort of laughter choking in his throat. He raised one bony hand and pointed a shaking finger into the darkness. Look on the vision I have brought, he gasped, and Kroll followed the gesture, peering into the shadows. Through a net of ropes and a litter of lashed down barrels, he saw the pile of coffins glimmering in the hold. The rattled laughter went on and on. He thought his heart would break. Lucy was packing up her books, checking her notes and marking places here and there, when Mina came to tell her the news in the market square. Lucy had planned to visit Dr. Van Helsing and talk out her theory and premonitions. Her dread of the evil she knew was close upon them. The word of Renfield's madness made her falter. She slumped into a chair. There wasn't any hope. She would end up crazed herself, and the warden's man would cart her off to a barred cell in the asylum. How could she go to Van Helsing now? Would he not call the guards himself? Mina sat on the window seat and took her hand. She was full of a proud and willful self-assurance that was motivated, she felt sure, by compassion for Lucy's distress. She knew precisely what the problem was, and it was time for her to speak. I know just what you're feeling, Lucy, she said. Don't let her again. How often must we tell you? Getting mail across the Carpathians is very, very difficult. We have heard besides that the region is built in storms. But to be so full of worry is not proper. How can you think it will help poor Jonathan?
Now,
She turned her attention to me and laughed.
I'm gonna get the black,
Oh, something terrible has happened.
the black,
I have no doubt.
premium color
I
black.
need no letters. His name is written on the air in letters of fire. And if I knew where he was right now, I would set out and not stop walking till I touched his hand. You are morbid and unseemly, scolded her sister-in-law. There is no need for all this drama. Everything will be fine. The Lord will hear our prayers, as he always has. The Lord? She asked, as if she could not place the name. She drew her hand away from Mina and stood and stared out onto the canal. The Lord is so far from us now, he cannot hear a word. The sound of the whirlwind drowns the sound. But I think I do not blame him. He has had to bear so much evil. I think he is quite as alone as we are now. No, Mina cried. It is all you. She raised her hand and grabbed at Lucy's hair, pulling away the black ribbon. The hair tumbled down on Lucy's shoulders. You curse the rest of us with the grief you caused yourself. You drove your husband out of Wismar. He fled in shame because his wife talked like a witch. Mina, Lucy said, her voice as calm and resigned as ever. There is not much time. You must look to yourself and see how frail the world is all around us. No false hope. The night is coming and we must walk naked. No, she cried again, holding her hands against her ears. You have consorted with the devil and now you try to soil those whom you envy. You hate us for being perfect. You always have. But you'll see how we rid ourselves of vileness. And on that note of triumph, she fled the room and ran from Lucy's house. She had to tell someone. If they didn't chase Lucy out of Wismar, her omens and corruption would set in like a lot. So Mina ran through the streets, her anger whipped to a frenzy, and beat on the door of the town council. But they were all at lunch. She ran to the house of the mayor, and no one came to answer the bell. The mayor was back in his garden, his hand in the housemaid's house. Mina raged that this
Now get the crazy art.
She knew what it meant to be chosen.
Black.
She came here full of the
Just go over some few places.
She loved this place for its decorateness, the candles and flowers, the silver vessels and amber. She drifted up the aisle serenely, like a kind of priest herself.
You know, just shading it.
Eyes and not the prophets. But when she reached the altar, she saw in the glow its flickering lights that ran sank into the wine and mulled the bread. They swarmed at the base of the cross, gnawing on one another's limbs. And there wasn't a sound in all their surrounding. Not a sound in the whole high temple, but the sound of Nina's scream. A commotion broke out in the sick room of the nunnery. Jonathan stood up on swaying legs and went to the cabinet to retrieve his clothes. The sisters pleaded and tried to leave him back, but he shook them off as if he were desperate. He tore off his nightshirt and stood there naked in front of them, and they ran from the room to summon Mother Superior. By the time she arrived, he had dressed himself in breeches and shirt, and he sat on the edge of the bed to draw on his heavy gray woolen socks. He grunted at the pain in his shoulder. His leg had healed enough for him to hobble around, and his head was pounding still with the shock of his accident. He didn't look as if he would make it a mile before he collapsed. "You'll hurt yourself worse," the mother warned him from the doorway.
Tell him to get
All over.
put the peach over his lip. This peach right here. Yeah, this the
And I live in this
premier
life,
color
she
peach.
said with bitter irony. "That is all I know. If I don't go home and find out what has exiled me, I will kill myself with grieving."
Get the
But you didn't remember so much as that till only yesterday.
brown,
The rest will come
the
back.
crazy out brown, lightly go over his lips
I
lips
don't know,
with
he
it.
cried. But I see this train of coffins bearing down on Bismarck, and I have to go and warn them. Mother, why will you not tell me what you know of the castle where I spent 3 days and left behind a blank? They faced each other across the room. He stood up and held the bedpost and looked at her accusingly.
Now I get
She wrung her
the
hand.
crazy art white,
She had lived here for
and now we just need to blend everything
every
out.
superstition to be around. But still, after all this time, she could hardly put the matter into words. "We pray against the darkness, Mr. Harker. The darkness is all about us, of course, but we try not to inquire too deeply into it. We find that we do more good when we turn our faces to the light. No doubt it is most old-fashioned to us, but that is how it has been handed down for us to do." But he hardly listened. He cupped his hands and stared into them, searching, searching, as if he meant to read his fortune on his palm. It was the way he held the pen when he gazed on Lucy's portrait. He remembered none of that, of course, but he felt an echo of something in the sound. As if there was someone still in Bismarck who Jonathan Harker was. He was willing to bet on that small hope, because he couldn't admit the sense of doom and the feeling that he was only letting it happen if he stayed here. "I have no money," he said, pulling on first one tooth, then the other. "I will make it up to you one day, I promise. I cannot convince you to stay
My
just
hands
4
hurting.
days. Shall you grow a little stronger?" "No," he replied quite firmly, but he came across the room and took her hands. "May I ask you to pray for me?" But he came across the room and took her hands. "May I ask you to pray for me?" Arms that we walked together along the road.
Shut my hands. God, dog.
Very curious thing.
I forgot the pen is on the board.
Muscle is gone. I know it when I pray. There has always been a kind of fury in the air. And she swept her free hand vaguely around her head. "No more. And though it ought to make me weep for
Hands,
joy,
man.
I find I am growing terrified." "What is it?" he pleaded. "I wish I knew. You. I fear there is not much time. As you are cynical of prayer, please take this gift yours to speed you on your way." And he followed her pointing finger down the tree-lined courtyard to where a russet horse, saddled and ready to ride, was tied to a hitching post. Though he winced at the pain in his shoulder, he had a momentary sense that all would be well. The clear sky, the captain and his mate lashed the plane across to a shrouded corpse. They stood at the rail, sleepless and numb, and tried to pray for the soul of their brother seaman. They had already buried 20 men at sea in 5 days' time.
Getting
The
the
words they used to
crazy,
call on God
the Premier Cup black again.
Mercy on his soul, the captain mumbled, and they picked up the corpse and heaved it overboard. Dully, they watched it hit the water, float for a moment in their wake, and sink. How many are we now? The captain asked. 6, the other replied. But they both knew the 4 sailors still alive were already sick with the fever. They lay in their hammocks in the stinking space below decks where the air had turned rotten like a charnel house. I implore you, Captain, he said, his voice near breaking. We must turn back, or at least seek shelter in the nearest port. Out of the question, replied the captain fervently. I will carry my principles with me to the bottom if I have to, but I will not abandon the voyage. We go on for the sake of those poor men who have already died. Man prevails. There is no other law. And so saying, he staggered to his cabin while the mate went up to the bridge to take the wheel. Kroll could hear the moaning of the fevered sailor down below as he sat at his desk and turned the pages of the meter's log. He entered the name of the man just buried as if he were keeping the book of the dead, preparing for a judgment day that was drawing ever nearer. We are true to our course, he wrote the triple again. Northwest at 30 degrees, wind is steady, 12 knots. He had run this ship for 18 years. He had traveled overland to the North Sea shipyard where she was built to watch her fitted. There were 3 or 4 men, the first mate included, who had been with him since the day that Peter left port on its first coastal run. He was a man who understood the
Think I'm gonna
every
go over it
time
again.
he put to sea.
Yeah.
But though he could accept storms and shoals,
I think I'll go again with the
part of the lot,
Premier Cup gold.
he couldn't face the thought that his ship was being broken up from within. He had to force himself to record the ominous details. We are burdened with a curse, it seems. 20 men lost to fever and 4 vanished without a trace. The rumor circulates among the men. It comes on them when the fever reaches its crisis, that there is some stranger aboard. We search from stem to stern, but there is nothing there. Nothing but rats. The Demeter has never been so overrun. He put aside his quill and held his head in his hands. He knew what the cruelest twist of fate would be. He was going to be the last survivor. Racked with guilt and shame, he dashed across the cabin to the ship's safe.
Okay, so I got that down, and the only thing I need to do is just like his necklace. His necklace is great.
Came out with a roll of bills the oarsman had paid him. Groaning with sorrow, he tore at it till it shredded. He staggered to the porthole above his desk and threw the money out onto the waves. The sea was not interested in being paid. No amount of money was enough. But he turned from the gesture with a renewed sense of command, and he walked across to the door, ready to take the wheel of his beloved ship. He had to hold on to the wall at every second step, but he made his slow way up the deck. He didn't even seem to realize that the fever had come upon him. Lucy was subdued when the nurse ushered her into the doctor's office. Van Helsing stood up eagerly at his desk and came around to embrace her. But the somber boog stayed his hands at the last moment. He waited for her to speak first. She put down her stack of books on the edge of the desk, looked blankly at the field pig in the jar, and slowly took off her gloves. She was wearing a dress that was gray and very severe, and her wide-brimmed hat was plain as a Quaker's. She was no less
And
beautiful than before.
this is I think this is it. This is my cartoon of J-Bug. J-Bug from B2K. My cartoon of him.